Yo, check out my website, www.theclowntimes.net. That's clown spelled with K as you see here. As you see, here are my rants here. I'll be more and more regular in posting rants in the future. You see what I have going on here. Also, you can also get your merch here at www.cafepress.com. Search for the Clown Time Sports. You see here I have sweatshirts, hoodies, baby gear, mugs, t-shirts. So just come on over and grab yourself some merch.
We're going to tonight's crazy college realignment edition of the Clown of a podcast. Excuse me, I can't talk tonight. I'm so discombobulated by it. But anyway, I'm Scott Burks. Please continue to check out my YouTube page. So whatever you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Even if you do not agree with either with me or my guest tonight, will say just comment anyway. We'll have some fun because either way, in any event, you'll be glad you did, and I'll be glad you did. And speaking of crazy conference realignment, the college sports in general, you know who this gentleman is to my left. Y'all know him from all things sports discussions, ACC Sports Blog, covering the ACC through and through. It was partner Hokie Smash. This is my man here, the co-creator of the website, Jeff Fan. He's here to join us. What's up, Jeff? How you doing, sir? Good to see you again.
Yeah, glad to be on, Scott.
Yeah, you got it. So let's just start with all the crazy rumors. Let's just start with our beloved ACC. We had our media days last week.
Mm-hmm.
You got everybody, all the teams, coaches, making the rounds as they all do.
Yep.
This time of year, it's always fun. Listen to Joe Orvius and Joe Giglio on their podcast talking stuff.
Yeah.
Great guys, by the way. But what were your takeaways from the ACC Media Day as far as the tone and everything else?
Well, at least as opposed to the spring meetings, they didn't sound nearly as contentious.
Right.
Which is a good thing. They did talk to Jim Phillips, and the number one thing on everyone's mind is, how are they going to increase revenue in the ACC?
Right.
He said some interesting things. In particular, one of the things he said was that the talks had really increased the last 6 months between the ACC and ESPN, and that he couldn't really reveal things at the moment, but that there was things in the work, which is a little bit different than what he had said in the past. I mean, it's still pretty vague, but in the past he really didn't specify any timeline, dates, or anything. So I thought that was interesting, but still coming out of the meetings, I think it was fine for the football media days, but I do really think they need to come out and say something here in the next few weeks and months to say, hey, this is really what we're working on, and stop like alluding to things going on, even if they might be positive, but to kind of put some people at ease to say, oh, he's really got that going, because you don't want to, and we might talk more about it later, but you don't want to get into a Pac-12 situation where you're, what like George Kliakoff, and every couple months you're saying, hey, it's right around the corner, it's right around the corner, right around the corner, and then, you don't have anything, and then a team, well, I don't expect a team to leave or anything, but, then you kind of have a little bit of a catastrophe going on. And today they preliminarily released what their deal was, which we might can look at later, but you don't want to get into that of saying there's something right around the corner and then you never get around to it. So,
Right.
It's good to hear that there's something in the works, a little bit more specifics than he had in the past, but it's time to kind of put that out there on the table.
Yeah, I agree with that because one thing, you don't want to be like that guy in the Pac-12 where George Kliakoff, where it's like we have some coming into work soon.
Right.
Like they've been saying that for the past year and a half, going on 2 years.
Yep.
I don't want Jeff Phillips to sound like that, right? Even though he did say that, like we might as well just get to it a little bit. That when someone asked about expansion, if he was interested in expansion, ACC, he said that they would be very interested in expansion.
Yep.
Which, given the lack of options out there, that would assuming the White will be in Notre Dame. And I guess because they have, I guess the streaming deal's up when 2 more years or 1 more year?
The
Not
Notre
streaming deal,
Dame
but
deal,
NBC. Yeah, the Notre Dame deal with
I
NBC
think
is up.
it's one or two more, and I know they're negotiating it right now.
Yeah, exactly. So, because I heard that NBC wants to like get out of the game in terms of like college sports. I guess because they had the Big Ten. I don't know how much they really want Notre Dame with the as far as like games with the Big Ten games that are to be responsible for, which I still think, God, that's a sweet deal that the Big Ten pulled. But at any rate, point being is that there's talk that NBC may move to push more games, more college games streaming to Peacock. And if they
Right.
want to stay over the air, maybe USA Network that they own. So if you're Notre Dame, the question becomes, and plus, given it's in 2027, when the CW deal, we'll talk about the CW deal in a minute with the ACC, that expires along with the Raycom deal, expires in 2027, if I'm not mistaken. So that would mean more money from the ESPN deal going to the ACC schools. I don't know how many million dollars, but point is, it's going to be a little bit more competitive. So if you're Notre Dame, if you're seeing that ESPN becomes the sole proprietor of the ACC starting in 2027, after the Raycom deals expire, and then you see the NBC want to push more of your games to streaming, what would you do in that situation, you Notre Dame? Do you really want to be Notre Dame, or hoity-toity Notre Dame? Do you want to be relegated to mostly stream for your home games?
Yeah, I don't think you'd want to do that if you're Notre Dame, but I also think that'd be kind of a bad move by NBC if they were to offer Notre Dame a primary streaming deal, because that's what they've been offered to the it's been offered to the Pac-12 today by Apple, and it's kind of universally looked at like, oh, I don't know about this without any linear, so or not much linear. And I don't think that I don't think Notre Dame would agree to that, and I wonder if NBC, they'll definitely put a couple games on Peacock, but I think the majority would still be on NBC because I think they'd like that double header of a Notre Dame game and then a Big Ten game, one in prime time, one during the day, and I think they would like that kind of setup. So that is one thing Phillips mentioned last week about Notre Dame. You're right, they're the white whale, and I do admire Notre Dame, desire to stay independent, and I think they're gonna stay independent for a while longer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I,
I agree.
I don't really see the ACC as having, at least not right now, having much opportunity to get Notre Dame into the conference. The other thing that you mentioned, though, and it's definitely not talked about nearly enough. For some reason, it gets totally wiped away when you talk about, does the ACC have a chance to renegotiate or make any more money, and it never gets talked about. But when that deal comes up in 2027 and those rights go from the CW, Raycom all the way back to ESPN, and you were talking about him before the podcast, Joe Ovies reported that the ACC is going to get an increase in their primary rights deal, and that it's probably going to be, it's not going to be Big Ten SEC money. There's still going to be that gap there, but from people saying, oh, there's a $17 million deal, which we knew was always wrong, always wrong. It still could be 4, 5, maybe 10 million more per school. Joe Ovies mentioned that it could be as high as a new deal being 600 million
Mm-hmm.
per school,
Right.
or as low as 350. But either way, I don't think it'd be that low. It'd probably be something in between. But you're going to get an increase, a pretty decent increase as well, and that's not that far off. And who knows if you can get it negotiated earlier or whatever. And no one ever talks about that. So I'm really glad you mentioned it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like people tend to overlook facts just for a good story.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't reported by some random account on Twitter who's talking about the ACC deal as if they know more than people who actually follow it really closely.
Right. You gotta love those Twitter experts. I tell you, it's fun during this time of the year. It's fun coming to alumni, but they don't really know what the hell to talk about. Speaking of which, um, the rumors been going around the last couple of days, mainly on social media, especially YouTube and some Twitter about, or excuse me, X. Stupid. But anyway,
Yeah, excellent.
it's just so stupid. But anyway, about Florida State and possibly Clemson paying $300 million exit fee over a span of 10 years, cutting the deal with the ACC. And with one guy, Greg Swain, that same Greg Swain said that it's going to be a done deal. It's going to be announced tonight. Well, let's see. It's 8:47 p.m. It's long after business hours out on the East Coast. Suffice to say, that shit ain't happening. But anyway, so it just amazes me that people still do not understand what a granted rights is. They don't understand it. Because if this is, first of all, a few things. If it was that simple, don't you think it would have been done a long time ago? Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
They would have been done a long time ago. And also, all they have to do is to look at what happened with Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. They did not move for a couple more years for a reason. Because it was too expensive to get out, even though they only had 3 more years left of the deal. And when they negotiated a year earlier, they had to pay what, $80-90 million per school?
With 1 year left.
With 1 year left. So how in the hell is Florida State going to leave with, well, it's 2023 right now, with 13 more years left on the deal? How? Make it make sense. It's math. It's simple
You
math.
you hadn't been on Twitter and seen it explained away by the contracts are made rebroken type thing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, go ahead, man, because I'm about to cuss somebody out. But go ahead.
I don't, I feel like there is a possibility that someone could challenge it before the end of, before 2036.
Sure,
But no one is gonna go out there and try to put that in court with 13 years, more than a decade. I mean, maybe when you get a little closer to 2030, I might feel like, okay, someone may challenge it if things are still going, sideways. But right now, it's just like absurd. I mean, no one is gonna risk that because the consequences of losing, which are pretty high, would really cripple. And this loan thing, I can't speak on Florida State, but I'm a Clemson alum. Went to Georgia Tech alum too. And if either one of them, and we're talking about Clemson, if either one of those pulled like a financial stunt like that, I mean, I would be writing the president saying, "What in the heck are you doing, risking nearly $500 million to get out of a conference and put yourself at that kind of risk and risk yourself athletically? You're still, if you go to another conference, Big Ten or SEC, you're already the gap that you were worried about, you just inherited it, by risking that, by moving. I mean, it's completely insane. I would really be upset if I saw a stunt like that from Clemson. I don't think anyone's gonna try it right now. It's just too much risk involved.
Right. And also, the other component of the grand rights that these Twitter experts do not understand is that means that if you sign a grant of rights, that means that your broadcast rights belong to the conference as long as that contract is around, which means that, okay, Greg Swam and other experts, if Florida State does leave, their rights will be owned by the conference, even if they pay that money. The rights will be owned by the conference for the next 13 years, which means no one, not only would they not get paid, but no one's going to see them on TV, whether they play at home or away.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the ACC and the other schools, I mean, I'm not going to agree to such a thing. And what's funny about it to me is, when you talk about the Pac-12, everyone's like, oh, they get the deal done, they get the grant of rights, they'll be stable for a few years. Or the Big 12, well, they got the grant of rights, they're safe, but somehow the ACC's is like some kind of paper mache grant of rights that teams are going to get out of. That I do not understand. How if you sign one in another conference, you're going to be stable, but if you sign one in the ACC, theirs is going to get broken. Really,
Yeah,
it's going to get broken. I mean, like I
yeah.
said, I don't think it's impossible to think someone could challenge it at some point, but I would focus more on towards the end of the decade than anything in the next 3, 4, 5 years.
I think to your point, like we're sharing a brain on this one, obviously. The earliest, if I'm Jim Phillips, if I sit on my behind and do nothing for the next how many years, if it's 5 years away from like 2030, that's when I'll be worried as an ACC fan. If Jim Phillips does nothing.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I mean, if nothing
Yeah.
happens in 5 years, if he doesn't produce anything, then I look at it like you can't blame. They keep blaming John Swofford for the bad deal, and yeah, it is a bad deal. No one argues that. But if you're 5 years from now and he hasn't been able to do anything, I mean, you can't look at your predecessor at that point.
Yeah.
You've had years to work on something, work with ESPN. It becomes your responsibility
Right.
now. I mean, you know how it is at work when someone replaces somebody or takes over.
Mm-hmm.
You get 6 months to maybe a year to blame the predecessor. And here we're going to give Phillips about 3 or 4 or 5. So if nothing's come together at that point, I'm going to blame him for what happens to the ACC if nothing happens. Not you only can blame Swofford for what he inherited, made it kind of tough at the beginning, but by 2028 or so, that it's on him.
Yeah, I agree with that. As long as he doesn't make any non-handshake alliances where he looks people in the
Yeah.
eye. As long as he doesn't do that crap anymore, he should be all right.
Yeah,
Last
that
thing,
was a
man.
mistake.
Yeah, that was that. I still am embarrassed by a grown man getting duped like that.
Yeah,
He was stabbed in the back, but his Pac-12 counterpart did, which we'll get
not,
to probably later. But
not his
still,
best moment, that's for sure.
that was a clown show right there. Last thing, man. More on a more pleasant note, ACC. The preseason football poll. I mean, they have still as much play as Florida State's been getting. They've been getting a lot of play. Clemson is still the preseason favorite, right? With 103 first place votes, followed by Florida State with 67. North Carolina came in with third place with 5 first place votes. And surprisingly, NC State, my beloved Wolfpack, had 1 first place vote to finish 4th. I think that third, North Carolina is ranked too high. And I think Pitt at number 6, tied for 6, is ranked too low. I think Pitt, a lot of people are sleeping on Pitt. I think the defense will be very well. Their uncovered schedule is tougher playing Cincinnati up the Big 12 now. West Virginia, the backyard brawl is always going to be a dogfight because it's a rivalry game, and Notre Dame out of conference. That's a pretty tough out of conference slate. And I will give some love to Louisville as well because they do not have a difficult out of conference at all. And I think they play Purdue in the non-conference. I'm not sure. I think they play Indiana actually. I think they play Indiana instead of Purdue. But and they play Notre Dame as well, if I'm not mistaken. But give some love to Louisville as well. But in short, I don't think North Carolina finishes as high as 3rd. I think Miami's too high at 5th. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on the ACC preseason poll? What do you like about it or disagree?
Well, first of all, I'm glad to be talking about the preseason poll, and it's just been so covered up with weird alignment. Let's get to the football. So,
Yes,
yeah,
sir. Yes,
yeah.
sir.
So I totally agree with you on that. I think um I think Miami is too high coming into the season. I think they have a lot of question marks, and that was kind of a brand name pick. North Carolina, I mean, they do have one of the 2 best returning quarterbacks in the ACC. So I'm kind of tentatively okay with them being 3rd. I like NC State as 4th, and they're one of my wild card teams because of what I think Robert and I and Brennan Armstrong reunited together, what they can do. can they put up the numbers they did together at Virginia? I don't know if he's got quite all the weapons that he had at Virginia, but I mean, we know what Brennan Armstrong can do, and a great transfer pickup for the Wolfpack. And I really like what you said about don't sleep on Pitt. I mean, you can argue that Pitt has been one of the two best ACC programs the last couple of years. I mean, they won an ACC title, finished ranked both years, won 11 games 2 years ago, 9 games last year. They got Phil Jurkovec there from BC. We know he can play, but he didn't have an offensive line at BC, so he struggled. He's going to have a much better group to play with at Pittsburgh. And, you give him some time, and he might actually be an upgrade over what they had last year with Slovis at quarterback. So I really like what you said, saying don't sleep on Pitt. I think that they're a team that's at 6 is probably too low.
Yeah, I agree with that. And plus, I mean, Pat Narduzzi this has been doing such a great job at this kind of a rocky couple years in the ACC, but he has that team playing physical, playing defense. He's still putting guys in the draft. He recruits pretty well. I'm telling you, man, Pitt gets no respect, man.
Yeah, I think a year after he loses Kenny Pickett, they come back and win 9 games and have one of the highest ranked wins for an ACC team when they beat UCLA in the Sun Bowl.
Yeah.
And I think Pitt is definitely on solid. They're on solid footing. Remember they used to be the team that would go 7-6 every year and win 2 games they weren't supposed to and lose 2 games where they were like 2 touchdown favorites, and they still have a tendency to lose a game or 2 that they shouldn't. But it's a lot less frequent than it happened in the past. And a game I'm looking forward to this year that's kind of under the radar is when Florida State goes to Pittsburgh this year.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting. I think both teams will be ranked.
Yep.
In that matchup, I think both teams will be very good. So it just remains to be seen. And again, to your point, they won 9 games last year with a mediocre at best Slovis at quarterback.
Yep.
So I mean, sky's the limit for a Pitt program. I'm actually proud, happy for Coach Narduzzi, but it's gonna be fun this year to be sure. So before we continue on this podcast, we'll give a quick shout out to my sponsor, BetUs.com. So listen to sports bettors. Your favorite sports book, BetUs.com, is back for their 30th year. 30 years of NFL action. So with the industry's biggest sign-up bonus up to 200%, BetUs offers their members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, UFC, MLB, college football. So if you're looking for live in-game betting, incredible odds with daily odds, boosters, props, and parlays, got them. How about fast payouts and exceptional one-on-one customer service? They got that too. So log into bet2us.com or call 800-792-3887. That's 800-79-BET-US. You can use a promo code TKT for the Klown Times as well. BetUS.com, where the game begins. All right, man. Let's close this podcast out. We mentioned them already in passing. The Pac-12. They had their meeting today with the chancellors and presidents of the remaining 9 schools. So they're no longer the Pac-12, not even the Pac-10. They're the Pac-9 right. And so apparently George Kliavkoff, the commissioner of the Pac-12, he discussed various options, according to the news report, of the media deals that they have. But Apple is said to be by far the clubhouse leader, which is primarily streaming. I don't think they have any linear deals out there, not even with the CW, which is crazy to me, but nevertheless. So how excited are those teams of the presidents, campus presidents, and chancellors? Well, the Arizona Board of Regents, who's in charge of both Arizona and Arizona State, they're meeting tonight. They're probably meeting right now as we speak to decide what the next steps are. They say that Arizona is more or less with 1 foot out the door than Arizona State is. I think Arizona State's going to do what Arizona does. And Utah is said to be on the fence right now. They really don't want to leave, but they've got to look out for themselves. And for Oregon and Washington, they're probably wondering, we're the athletic branch, but what the hell are we doing? So I ask you this, man. come the end of the week, do you expect Arizona and maybe another school or two to defect from the Pac-12 conference, or just one of those things just to look out for, just a nothing burger?
Yeah, I think the Pac-12 is in a really tough spot. Um, and it's kind of a shame because if the scenario plays out like you're saying, where the four corner schools end up in the Big 12, and you've got Oregon and Washington in some limbo, maybe they end up in the Big 10. You got some legitimate programs like Stanford and Cal and Oregon State and Washington State that basically wouldn't have a home.
Right.
And I would have to say, after reading some of the details on the deal, there hadn't been a dollar figure attached to it, but Pete Thamel from ESPN said that initially the deal starts lower than the Big 12's, for example,
Mm.
and could increase with incentives based on subscriptions to eventually, be more than the Big 12's deal. But the problem is it doesn't sound like there's hardly any linear, maybe none at all. That part's not quite clear,
Yeah, I
but
don't think there is. Yeah.
it's primarily a streaming deal, which I can't imagine would be all that appealing to the schools. I guess it depends on where those dollar figures end up, but right now I'm kind of like 70-30 that that this is the last year we'll see the Pac-12 in
Mm.
basically its current format. I mean, we're not privy to all the numbers that were shown, so it's not that you never know. There could be something to it that we're not aware of, um, but it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. I don't think they the Pac-12 a few years ago went into this risky venture, running the Pac-12 network on their own, and it was like, well, if we get subscribers, and they're kind of in that same boat now. It's like, well, it'll be great if we get subscribers, and I don't know if they'll be willing to go through that again. It doesn't feel like it. Yeah, is a chance. I'm not saying there's no chance that they'll accept it, but right now it doesn't look good for them.
Yeah. So it's like Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah,
You're saying
there is.
there is a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Right. I think, man, in all seriousness, this is sad. It's sad to
Yeah,
watch.
it is that.
I mean, because the Pac-12 that we grew up loving, well, not loving, but at least watching, right? With USC, UCLA. I mean, they're things that's so bad they decided to join the Midwest Conference and put their travel, all the logistics into like up in limbo. That's how bad things got in the Pac-12. And then you had the worst football squad in Colorado saying, "We're out. We're headed back to the Big 12." If your worst school on the field, that is football, says we want out, that's crazy. That just scream a lot of good things for the Pac-12. And now you got Arizona on the verge of leaving, possibly. They're doing what's been done to them is what they should have done to the Big 12 two
Yeah,
or 3 years ago when Oklahoma and Texas announced that they were voting for the SEC.
yeah,
Instead, they sat on their behinds, they sat on their hands, and they turned up their noses at some of those Big 12 schools, and they're hoity-toity there, saying they're not academically good as we are. We're just fine. Instead of putting the stake in the Big 12's heart, they let them fester, and once you let something fester, it grows. And so that's what's happening with the Big 12 going after the Pac-12 this time. Brett Yormark, he's one heck of a commissioner. I give him credit, man. When he
yeah.
smells blood, he's going after him. He's making no apologies.
You got to give him. You have to give him credit. I mean, he's managed to make a reasonable deal sound like a SEC kind of
I
deal.
know.
He's picking teams apart. He's in the news constantly, and yeah, I mean, you got to give him credit. He's got the Big 12 front and center. I mean, legitimately, they were left for dead, and he picked them up from the ashes and has them in a pretty good position. And he did everything George Kliavkoff didn't do. He did do, even smartly getting that deal negotiated before the Pac-12 by just saying, yeah, we'll do the extension. So yeah, you got to give him credit. You got to give him credit.
Yeah, and the fact is that, yeah, that's why I say he's doing what the Pac-12 should have done, what Larry Scott should have. Now, granted, Larry Scott tried to go after the Big 12 years ago, 2010, I think it was, maybe 2013, brother. And when it was only the Texas insistence of having the Longhorn Network is what broke that deal up. Otherwise, you would have had the Pac-16 a long time ago. But
Yeah.
still, but then those schools would have been like, well, damn, we don't have anybody to help us out with this network of ours that no one gets to see. So I guess it's a blessing in disguise. But nevertheless, I mean, Yormark is so great. He's so good for the Big 12. He says he's making their average $31.7 million, which is nothing to sniff at. But not only is not even the same ballpark as the Big 12, and I mean, as far as the Big 10 and the SEC, it's not even as much as the ACC. But the hype he's generating is so positive, is that it's like people are like making the ACC more like an afterthought. And again, props to him for he's doing his job as a commissioner. He's doing his job, but yeah, I just kind of feel for the Pac-12. And speaking of the CW, which we alluded to earlier, I know that people picked at the ACC for putting sucking up a deal to show some of the games on the CW, but two things: A, this takes the place of Bally Sports, which is bankrupt, right? And Raycom will still produce those broadcasts for the CW, but the thing is that the CW is on every station. It's on any cable package. Everyone has the CW, which means that it's going from Bally Sports being a regional thing to a national thing. A lot of people get to watch the ACC on that channel every Saturday.
Yeah.
So everybody will get to see Cincinnati at Pitt instead of being on Bally Sports. Everybody gets to see it. It's hard to believe that game was supposed to be on Bally Sports. That's criminal. But still, everyone get to see that, and everyone will get to see the other games, like when the ACC schools played the directional universities, right, and things like that. They still get to see those games on the CW. So it's not taking for those Twitter experts out there, it's not taking the place of the ESPN deal. This is sub-licensed. This was sub a long time ago. This is sub-licensed through ESPN. But instead of being regional, it becomes national. When things become national, it means more exposure, and more exposure means more of this. It's not going to rival the SEC and the Big Ten, obviously, but more money, and I think it's like, what, a few $1 million more? That's still good. That's still healthy. And so, again, it's going to grow even more once it expires in 2027. So,
Yeah, definitely from an exposure point of view, the other things aside, that was a pretty good deal for the ACC. I mean, they're basically on a national network in a bunch of homes on linear, a place for, where they're not having to compete for airtime. So from that perspective, it was pretty good to move from the regional sports network that frustrated a lot of people when they were trying to find, hey, where's this ACC game? It's not on here, it's over here, whatever.
right.
That it was a good move.
Yeah, it did work. So that's one thing Jim Felix said, right? So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, props for that. Tell the folks where they can find your great work on the web and where they can find you on Twitter to interact with you about it.
Yeah, you can find us blogging on the ACC at allsportsdiscussion.com. You can find me on Twitter at Talking ACC Sports, and don't forget about my podcast partner, ASD _ Smash.
There you go. And shout out to Goki Smash. He's the man. He's truly the man. And so please, y'all, check out this guy's great work. And please enjoy his work as well as Goki Smash on there. It's very entertaining. It's very informative, too. They know what they're talking about when it comes to ACC. So check them out there as well. So that's for me. Please continue to check me out on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel, because you'll be glad you did, and I'll be glad you did. So until next time, until more realignment madness happens. Y'all
Yeah.
take care. Have a good rest of the week. Stay cool and all that good stuff. Take
All
care.
right. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Take care.